Hello and welcome back to What Now? On the Threshold of Life, Death, and Grief. And I'm here in the studio with my friends and colleagues.
David Kennedy.
I'm Red Keating.
I'm Julie Brown. And we are here to do our Season 2 wrap-up. Feels kind of incredible that we've now completed 2 full seasons of the podcast. And here we are. We're just going to take a little bit of time just to reflect on this season, on the guests we had, the topics we covered, how we personally experienced them, and the feedback we had from listeners. And then we'll finish off with talking a little bit about what's to come, because, of course, we're already busy preparing for Season 3. We have people booked and we're already cataloging recordings for the fall.
When this season started, we had some ideas of where we were going, but I always love how it unfolds. And I always think of John O'Donoghue's writings where he said, "May I live my life like a river that kind of surprisingly unfolds around every new bend," right? So that's how I feel about this podcast. It's fun. Mm-hmm. And we've had some great people on, and the three of us have had some great discussions around some topics. So it's been a great season.
You're always a good introducer there, David. Getting the ball rolling. Yeah.
I know. I do my little intro, and then I look at David like, "Say something, David." Yeah. There's something in all of them that I feel good about, proud of, to offer to our listening community. But let's maybe just start with, what are some of the ones that have stood out to you, or where people have spoken to you about them?
I would say the one for me that was the biggest surprise was the one we did on whether to keep something or give it away. I remember recording that one and planning on that recording, and that felt really thrown together. It was like, let's do something, and that became the topic. And if there was one that I received feedback on a lot, it was that one, the question of what to do. So that must have felt really relevant to people as to what to do with the stuff when someone dies. I remember us calling it the stuff episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the practical side of what, you can't be in this work like we have been over the years and not realize that, there's a lot of theory, there's a lot of things we have to understand, but there's very practical things that have to happen. And those are the things that get us bogged down often in grief and in the palliative one, where it's all the things we have to practically look after and take care of. So.
Yeah, and I think that's something I'm appreciating about the conversations the three of us have had, whether it's the keep or give away, or our most recent one on the decisions, or the just think positive one. And then we had one around caregiving, is that we're trying to marry some of the practical, almost tactical stuff, like how do we do some of these things, with also still remembering kind of the whole human being and the emotional struggles that are very natural that we have with these kind of subjects, right? So I hope our listeners are hearing that we just try to get really very reasonable and kind of common sense in our approach, and then also try to not forget that, for example, with the giveaway one, there's lots of reasons why it can be really hard to give away, other than also just the practical.
I always figure if you can't give people something to take home and remember, and that's useful, somehow you're missing the point. That it needs to be real. As you said, David, there's lots of theory and lots of writing and lots of language, but I think we try to keep it real and keep it on that level that hopefully people can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
I just had, and you'll laugh, both of you. I had this image through my mind of my childhood watching the cartoons. You remember Leghorn
Foghorn.
Yeah, that's him. He had a great line where he said, "I see your lips flapping, but I don't hear anything." So, I hope that it's more than lips flapping. I think, too, one of the things this season has been the wonderful guests that we have been able to include in this. And I know that's always something that we take very seriously, is that we want to provide the right kind of people a voice through this podcast, too. because as we've often said, we want this to be a good resource for people. And certainly the three of us don't have all that information, but finding the right people who can bring a perspective. And I think our listeners should know that we take that very seriously, and not just because somebody wants to be on the podcast that we allow that. It's something that we really do want it to be something meaningful. And we've had some great guests this season. I think for me, the one that, they were all so good, but I love I don't want to call them the edges, but the expansion of knowledge. People like Vinnie Ferraro, Patricia Pearson, who explored the outer edges of our experiences.
That's a good way of putting it.
I so agree. That's a great way of putting it. It's like they help us talk about and find the language to talk about these things that can be challenging to talk about, and yet not for them, like there's such like fluidity. They were a joy to interview. I found myself riveted and actually have listened to those episodes myself several times.
I'm always surprised that people say yes. Julie, you send out the ask and people say yes. So I'm always shocked that people with that knowledge and that kind of caliber are willing to come and speak with us. It's really an honor.
Mm-hmm. We also had a lot of excitement, I know the three of us did, about interviewing Mary Frances O'Connor on her book, The Grieving Brain. And that was a real pleasure to even prepare for in reading her book and thinking deeply about it. And then she was wonderful to interview.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one, in terms of things that have stayed with me, that idea and that book and her interview, that whole field that is emerging around understanding the brain, and the gift of her choice to look at grief for us has really been amazing. And I have internalized and used that many times to explain, that living in two worlds at one time, and that the brain mapping, and why giving us a reason to explain some of the feelings that we have as grief, and also our reactions in grief, that we're not going crazy. And I think that's I received several emails from former clients of my group where parents had lost a child, and all of them, that was one of their first reactions was, I now realize that even although you told me this, that I wasn't crazy, that there is reasons why my brain was acting the way it was.
Yeah, this is your brain on grief. And it's such depathologizing information, right? Just explaining this is a natural human process that's a very challenging and a very hard one. But yes, you're not crazy. There's not something wrong with you. And also, here's why it takes so long. Your brain is working really hard to process and integrate the loss and the grief.
When you're thinking about speaking with her, not about content necessarily at this point, but everyone we've had as a guest has been so easy to speak with and made our jobs almost effortless in terms of how they've presented, how they speak and offered their time. And you think someone of the caliber of those folks, they make our job so easy. And they're providing such good information. Like back to the brain, absolutely giving a context for why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. And when you have a context, that helps understand where you are and why you are.
Mm-hmm. And I would agree with everything you just said, Red, in terms of the guests easy to interview. One of I chuckle because I don't know how the two of you responded, but I got a number of emails after we did release the one from Vinnie Ferraro, and everybody asked the same thing: does he look and act the way he sounds? Because he's just so calming and chill. And I said, he's exactly what you hear.
Yeah. There's that power in that slow, contemplative choice of words that he has that was just so soothing.
He just so spoke to the human condition, or just like what it means to be human. Yeah, I've had several clients who have actually listened to his episode many times, and it's been a great platform to jump off from that and to really work with the five remembrances more with some of them. So I've really appreciated that.
I think it really speaks to that sense of spirituality that people have, and that they're looking for, and a way of bringing that home to their personal lives. And again, just having that context and seeing it through that lens. I love the fact that he called us dude and man.
Mm-hmm. Bro.
Bro. Yeah.
And I think you also like that he
he was the first person to swear, and I just love that. Yeah. And the word he used wasn't in my text. That's not even a swear word, but it's so funny.
Right.
Like he was just so natural. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think too, one of the things I appreciate, and the longer we do this, I'm really, really loving what the three of us, if nobody else does, I think for us, it's really a great thing. I love the fact that we're trying to include, as you both have alluded, a wide breadth of not just topics but whole areas of discussion. So I think of what we've just talked about Vinny, about Patricia Pearson and her experiences around dying people, and then we look at specific issues. So Maureen Pollard and her talk about suicide. We are, I don't want to jump ahead of the queue here, but we are also going to be looking at specific areas in grief around overdose death, around parent-child death. I mean, we're trying to look at how do we include specific grief pieces and death and dying pieces along with the other areas of human existence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I checked when listening to some of the episodes this year. I'm listening to are we being balanced, and I think we're trying to work pretty hard to give that balanced perspective, wide breadth of topic, and when I hear it, I was what didn't we say? What didn't get said? What wasn't discussed is another place to go back to. Just because you've had the one conversation doesn't necessarily mean that conversation is over. And we can revisit some of the stuff that we've done in the past from a new perspective or in a different light. But I always think, I'm always concerned: are we being balanced, and are we being, making sure that we're being fair on both sides, like give or take away, or keep or give away. It's just as important to keep some things as it is to give some things away, and making sure that we have that balance. It's just as important to be part of the treatment decisions for your life as it is to take the information from the physicians and doctors around you to help you make that decision. I'm hoping that we're being balanced for people.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I along with that, Red, is the idea of being balanced and fair, all while keeping in mind that everybody has unique experiences, right? And there's no one piece that is the answer for everybody. Right. And I would hope people understand that in our podcasts, that we're not saying there's one way to do this and there's only one solution or we have the magic pill. We all recognize that we can give hopefully a balanced perspective of many different things, and that everybody is going to be looking at this in their own unique way.
Yeah. And I think that's important. Just because we say one thing, it doesn't mean you can't say the other.
Right.
But you have to say something or you've got dead air.
Right.
Yeah. Hopefully we're achieving that.
Has there been anything for you, either of you personally, that just felt, I think we've already established all of these conversations feel meaningful to us, and the guests, as you were saying, like we choose them, carefully. And but is there been any particular takeaway that has felt really meaningful to you?
On a personal level, there's many. All of them have contributed. But I think what I wanted to say about this too is that I have looked for and found pieces of hope. I think of the podcasts of Understanding Dementia with Dr. Sarah Brinson and Jill. I think of the one we did with Daniel Rosenbaum around psychedelics. Mm-hmm. In other words, there's there's things, and then of course the brain, but there's things going on to help us realize that we are moving in the right direction. We're learning positive things. It's not just about dealing with what's happened, but there's research in terms of where we are going in the areas of death, dying, and grief that I find that was meaningful to me. This one, I have a sense of hope about things.
What about you, Red?
Yeah, I agree with you, David. There, I'm interested in the psychedelics to go back to at some point to find out what research or what more has been done in that world, with Daniel Rosenbaum, because I think that's one of those fields. Again, it's not the answer for everything, but I think it's a field of study that's quite interesting because its use is so widespread, not just grief, but in other aspects of our human condition. Again, I was really shocked at the keeper giveaway with that discussion. And actually, I've had a few people give feedback on the one that we did on the written word, that they really enjoyed the poetry and the readings that we shared. And I guess I get shocked by ones that it hits people, that it becomes meaningful for people, and to hear that feedback is just so wonderful.
And that's important too. What you just said around it just reinforces. We appreciate the feedback. I mean,
yeah.
It's really good for us to hear that your comments. What is it that you hear in this? Because we can all listen to one podcast and we each walk away with things that we hear that might be different, right? So I love the feedback, and I would really encourage people to, don't be afraid to give that to us.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's very rewarding to see an email show up or a text, or somebody stops you out in public and says, I was listening to this and, that made me wonder about this, or are you going to do something on that, or that sort of thing. And I really appreciate that. So just a shout out to our listeners. I know I was speaking with Dr. Sarah Brisbane and Jill McPhee about their episode on dementia. And I know in their world around dementia work, I know the podcast spread quite a bit in their world listening to that, and people were struck by the comprehensiveness of the information, because they're both clearly experts, but also just like that humanity and deep caring that they have in the work. So that was really lovely. And my heart was warm just knowing that the podcast served maybe people that we hadn't felt like there was something there for them yet.
What I like is that it stays. Just old episodes are still there to go back and listen to. And so I like the fact that it's a document, like you said, David, it can reach more people than the three of us could reach individually ourselves, because it stays and it's there and people can access it. And hopping on top of the feedback comment, it's wonderful. I know all three of us are very thankful to even have listeners, that people are out there listening. And I know that our listenership more than doubled, I think, this season. And we are incredibly grateful for that there are people out there who are regular listeners and that share the podcast with friends and family. And we are really grateful for those folks out there listening.
And I think we all get shocked by that, Red. And I mean, how many countries has it been downloaded in now?
It's over 50.
Over 50. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the amazing thing about this world of technology, right?
Mm-hmm. That's really weird to think.
Now, they could send the three of us to those 50 countries.
That's
on tour.
On tour. I tell people I have the face for podcasts, though.
Yeah, so maybe as we start to wrap up, that's a way to let our listeners know we do love and appreciate hearing from you, and to reach out to us or reach out to Hospice. There is something on the website about the podcast, and if you ever wanted to give us feedback or suggest topics, we read anything that is sent in. We read it, and Hospice is really good about making sure that information gets to us. So, shall we talk about season 3?
Yeah, sure.
Because we're going to be recording over the summer. We already have some guests booked, and we're really looking forward to those recordings. I think we've already said that for those people who have maybe not heard their story or their issue in the podcast yet, we are aware there are things that we haven't covered. In fact, we have a whole list of things going, like maybe it's not something that the three of us feel like we want to tackle that topic alone, or we want to really find an expert voice around that. So, we're doing research in the background to find the right people to bring to those conversations. And so, as you already alluded to, we're going to give some voice to death by overdose and the grief that ensues with that, because that's, very important. And it's something that's really playing out in our communities and families.
The specific griefs need to be covered, but we also recognize that they may have a limited targeted audience, but it's wider than we think, because people in those experiences are connected to families and friends and colleagues who often need to understand that uniqueness of grief. So
that's right.
We will be doing 2 podcasts on, one, the palliative journey of children, and then the grief journey of parents and family after the death of a child. So there's another specific grief type, but the reality is that I think in these specific topics, it's important that we all understand that it can help us when we are interacting with other people who have those grief experiences. And because that's what we always hear is, I don't know what to say to these people. I don't know what to I don't know how to understand what they're going through. Not that you can, but I think allowing yourself to understand the issues around their experiences can be great for all of us.
Well said.
Yep.
Yeah. We also have an interview lined up with an oncologist, speaking to some of the experiences of, oncology. Obviously we reference cancer a lot, but now we're going to hear from a doctor who's had a long career in the oncology field. We've already got several things lined up and some other interesting topics that we're doing some research about too.
That's going to be a good year.
Yeah.
Yep.
It is.
Looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess in closing, we'll just give a shout out. Thank you for listening. Thank you for letting us into your ears and your brains and into your community, and for those people who have also sent this out to others.
And thank you to everybody involved in this podcast too.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things go on behind scenes and the support of hospice for us, and their involvement in this. And then, of course, our sound engineer and Kevin, and all of those people that go into making this thing work.
Yeah, maybe we should give out a shout out to Kevin Fleming, because he came on board with us here in season 2. And so for those listeners that have noticed that the quality has improved, that's not us, that's Kevin Fleming. Yeah.
He's able to make us sound better.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are, I think, surprised when they hear that this podcast is recorded sort of live off the floor. Mm-hmm. But Kevin is able to do a bit of magic and take out the odd cough or the the odd clearing of the throat and things like that. I agree. Thank you to all those folks, listeners, and all those involved at hospice and those involved behind the scenes with the podcast. It's great. And we really, really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So say goodbye.
Until season 3, first episode will drop at some point in September.
Yep. And I believe that hospice will be running some just repeated episodes through the summer. So there'll be little reminders probably coming into people's mailboxes and things like that, this episode, if you want to hear it again, is the one that's being featured. So, yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to What Now? On the Threshold of Life, Death, and Grief. What Now is produced in partnership with Hospice Peterborough, dedicated to providing compassionate care and support to individuals and families facing life-limiting illness and loss. What Now is recorded at Thin Spaces Studio in Peterborough, Ontario. Special thanks to Paradise Garage for providing the music. Technical support is by Sean Heichard, and audio engineering by Kevin Fleming. More episodes of What Now are available for free on most major podcast platforms. If you found value in our conversations, please support us by following the show, leaving a 5-star review, and sharing with your friends and loved ones. If you'd like to support the essential work of Hospice Peterborough, please consider visiting hospicepeterborough.org/donate. Your contribution helps us continue to provide vital care and support. Until next time, may you find peace and comfort on your journey.